We're in a new series we're calling Seasons. You ever stop to think about how much we live under the clock? Anybody?
Yeah.
You like that? You ever feel that ticking in your life? We rush from appointment to appointment. We fill our schedules from sun up to sundown and even beyond. We're afraid of losing time. We look for ways to save time. We're often willing to work overtime, especially at time and a half. And heaven forbid anyone waste our time. I mean, Dead Poet Society taught us to what? Carpe diem, seize the day. That's exactly right. Seize the day. And even this weekend. What is this weekend? The end of day. Who enjoys that though? Who likes that extra hour of sleep? How many of you don't like your children this morning because they didn't give you that extra hour of sleep? Okay, just checking. Daylight savings time. Even that name is kind of silly, right? I mean, it shows even the name, we're trying to save time to capture as much daylight as possible so we can be productive. But you know what they say about time? Time is a great teacher, but unfortunately it kills all its pupils. And isn't that the truth? It's always fascinating for me when I get to visit other countries. Like, recently we got to spend some time in India. I am reminded that not everyone thinks about time the way we do in America. You guys know that, right? Yeah. Amy says, praise God. There's a fluidity of time in other cultures, and I've gotten to experience that. Probably the best way to illustrate this is a story from a few years ago. You guys know Suki, part of our church for many years. Before she had children, she had a baby shower. And some of us were invited to the first baby shower for Dia. And we got the invitation, and I believe the invitation said something like starting at noon. And so like good Americans, what do? We showed up at 11:55. And we waited. And we waited. And we waited for an hour. I see a head shake right there. You're like, you know exactly what I'm talking about, David, don't you? Exactly. He's like, yep, you made the crucial mistake. About an hour later, everybody else starts coming in. Now, I think Suki felt bad. She's like, oh, I didn't even think about this. And, we're like, it's fine. It's all good. It was a Saturday. We're good. We're just sitting there talking. It's great.
That's Asian time.
That's right. That's standard Asian time. Exactly. Well, here's where the story gets funny, because then Suki gets pregnant with a second child, Dave, and there's going to be another baby shower. Only this is during the week on an evening, a weeknight evening, and we get the invitation, and it says 7 p.m. We've learned we are smart. 7 p.m. means 8 p.m., except when Suki has gone to the trouble to produce two invitations, one for her Indian friends that says 6 p.m., one for her American friends that says 7 p.m., who showed up at 8 p.m. an hour late. You just got to laugh at those moments. We walked in, when Pastor Ryan was still here, he was just mortified by the fact that we'd walked in this late. I just laughed because I thought it was hilarious, because it just goes to show we think about time differently. Over the next few weeks, what we want to do, actually it's between now and Advent. Just so you know, there's 4 weeks till Advent, so get those Christmas lists ready and start that shopping. It's coming quickly. We want to look at this. We want to look at seasons, the significance of seasons in our lives, and more importantly, maybe what we can learn about God, ourselves, and faith when we can take a step back, maybe step out of time just a little bit, stop rushing around, and take a look at the seasons. Not just the seasons around us, but more specifically the seasons we're in. What's interesting is that as much as we live by the clock, if we take a step back, we see that the world around us, we can see a schedule. We can see something much different. One that's not much in a rush. One that's, like the birds saying, quoting this passage today, to everything there is a season. We can live in these seasons. In fact, if you were at our retreat yesterday, you know this passage we're going to read. It was part of our Lectio Divina. And look at what the scripture has to say to us here. It says, there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent, a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What do workers gain from their toil? I've seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from the beginning to end. It's very tempting when we read a passage like this to break down those 14 pairs, that we see. And we'll maybe take a look at a couple of them in the next couple of weeks. But I want you to see that what the writer here is trying to communicate is not pinpointing every little detail of our life. He's throwing a wide pendulum swing here. It's all encompassing for all aspects of humanity. I mean, when we went through that list, did you see those things just as a part of life? A time to be born and a time to die, tear down and build, laugh and weep and dance and mourn. He's just the writer's giving us just saying, this is humanity. This is the life that we live. And to make the point, he gives it in extremes: birth and death, weeping, laughing, keeping, throwing away, silent, speaking. And life happens in these moments, but it also happens in between. And that's what we want to figure out. You see, I think there's two different mentalities when it comes to how we see time, how we see life. And I think you can understand it maybe in something that Jesus said to his disciples right before his ascension. They were asking him, they said, "Is now the time for your kingdom to come?" I mean, you got to love the disciples, even in this moment, after 3 years with Jesus, seeing his death, seeing his resurrection, experiencing all this, they're still in this moment to go, but what about Rome? Is this the time and the place? Is this what you're going to do? Is this the way we're going to kick them out and we're going to have power and we're going to take over just like we've been talking about? And Jesus says to the disciples, it's not for you to know times or seasons that the Father has fixed by his own authority. It's interesting, he uses two words: times, chronos, measured sequential time. That's what we're talking about mostly when we're talking about hours, minutes, and seconds. It's those appointments that we rush to and those things that tick off in our life. But then we also understand there's seasons. We've entered a new season, haven't we? The trees are, changing color. I love to just look outside. I was in the office with Liz this week, and we're having a conversation. I am the dog from Up, just so you know. Squirrels do distract me. We're having a conversation. I looked at Liz, and I just went, oh, look at that tree. That tree is so beautiful. Look at the red. It's just such a vibrant red. We have seasons, kairos, the right time, the appointed time, God's perfect timing. And we have to be able to view life kind of in both ways, where chronos measures time, kairos interprets the time. And I don't think we always realize that. I don't think we always understand. We know we might be experiencing something, but I think sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees, and we're so inundated with what's happening, we forget to think about why. What is this season? What's happening now? And when we think about the difference between being chronos people and kairos or season people, it can seem insignificant for us. But if we think about the main difference between this, time goes one direction. Have you noticed that? Does it slow down? No. Can you go back? No. I mean, I was thinking this morning, the great artist Cher, "If I Could Turn Back Time," what a great song, right? No, you can't. You can't. I mean, what a Sunday to be here. You get the birds, you get Cher. Man, this is a good Sunday. Look at this. We can't turn back time. We know, and that leads us to a lot of angst, doesn't it? A lot of regret sometimes about thinking about, if I could only go back and redo this. But maybe that's where the beauty of seasons come in. What happens with seasons? They just keep coming back around, don't they? They just keep coming back around. They're cyclical. Whether we want Iowa winter or not, it is coming. And these two different mentalities can really shape who we are, how we grow, how we experience faith. I mean, if time marches forward, then if we put faith in that vein, in that lane, we see faith becoming a step-by-step process. Well, I have to do this, and then I have to do this, and there are specific steps I must take in order to grow in Christ. It begins with that decision to follow Jesus. And this is great for us because this fits an achievement culture perfectly. Because we love a list to check off. We love achievement. We love to think, I did that. And this allows us to win at being a Christian or win at following Jesus. Because guess what? If I've done step 1, step 2, and step 3, I win. And so it leads us to see faith like this, up and to the right. And that's what we think about life in a lot of ways. We want to always see up and to the right. And while, to be fair, we want to see growth in our lives, does this describe anybody's life? No. If it is your life, let me know. We'll talk later. But no, this isn't anybody's experience. Life deals us something different. And this idea of perfection or arriving can seem to be further and further away. And so what we do is we convince ourselves, we go, this is silly. This is not anybody's life. This is certainly not my spiritual growth and development. This isn't how I begin to look more like Jesus. So what we do is we come up with a different idea and we say, oh, it looks more like this. Maybe a little more accurate, right? But I will say, yeah. If you look at this, my Excel users in the room, the guys that love Excel, if we were to put a trend line on this, what would we see? We'd still see positive up and to the right, wouldn't we? I mean, in the middle, it looks a little different, but the trend line's basically the same. It's still the same as the last one. It's still up and to the right. It's a great book I read a few years ago. I've talked about it before. It's called Our Unforming by author Cindy Lee. And she talks about just this very thing, and she's the one that I got these graphics from. She says that in this chronos frame of mind, we use spiritual practices as a way to make us feel accomplished as we check them off the list. And then she says this. She says, the drawback of a linear orientation is when things don't go as planned, when life turns messy and complicated, we lack the spiritual vocabulary and depth needed to navigate. I see some head shaking. Yeah. Been there? Yep. Yes, we all have. And it only takes a walk outside right now to see that most of life doesn't move up and to the right in a linear fashion. And if we can look at the world and the way God made it and the seasons that we get to experience, and even when you think about the seasons as God created them in our calendar, 6 days of work and 1 day of rest. And you dig into the Jewish calendar and you see there's even seasons of forgiveness built into the calendar. There's all these seasonal things happening. If God has built this into the world we live, why would we think we could be more spiritually healthy and whole, trying to push ourselves into a more linear mode that emphasizes progress, production, and perfection instead of the life that we see around us? Maybe we need to think of our lives more like this. No steps, no stages. We live in relationship with God. We live in relationship with one another. No end, no hurry to get done. As Lee says, seasons give us a clue that there's an alternative approach to formation not measured by clock time. Yeah. Just think about your life for just a moment. Think about the seasons that you've experienced. Which of these graphs better projects really where your life has been? As much as we want it up and to the right, have you experienced seasons of growth, seasons of life, seasons of drought, seasons of what seemed like death? We have, haven't we? We've all experienced that. And if we need more proof, we can be reminded that not just that God made the seasons, but we see that God operates with a big picture seasonal mentality. I mean, think about even the life of Jesus for just a moment. Jesus lived for 30 years, and we basically have 2 stories about 30 years. One is when he was born. One is when his family took him to the temple when he was, 12? And nothing else. And when about 18 years later from that last moment we hear about him, we see him again. And as he steps on the scene, as he begins his ministry, his family's like, go, be what you're supposed to be, do what you're supposed to do. And how did Jesus often respond? Look at John 7. He says, my time is not yet here. You see, there was a right season for Jesus come and to be revealed. And even the Apostle Paul talks about this in Galatians 4 when he says, but when the set time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law so that we might receive adoption to sonship. You see, there is a right time, a right season for what's happening in our lives. But there's a problem with this because in up and to the right thinking, it gives us such a sense of control. If I do this, if I do this, if I do this, I can control my life. But really, how much can we control the seasons? Winter's coming, folks. Can any of you stop it? Please, I'm begging you. Can any of you please stop it? No. The problem with time is far too often we resist the truth. It's not something that we can control as much as we may delude ourselves into thinking we can. I mean, you go back to that list that we saw in Ecclesiastes 3, those extreme examples that we saw. How many of those things do we really have control over? Some, but not many. One commentary said this. It says, as a whole, this poem isn't about what human beings should or should not do, but about what they actually do and what is done to them. The point is that all the things it mentions are aspects of human reality. We have to work within that framework of the times which we cannot control. In our moments of greatest honesty, we have to admit, as much as we love to think we control our lives and the world around us, we have much less control than we think. And the more we try to control it, to control time, you know what happens? The more time ends up controlling us. And we hate this. We hate this. We are independent people. We love our freedom. Nobody's going to tell me what I can and can't do, except when life does tell us what we can and can't do. We have to adjust our understanding of freedom. I remember a seminary professor talking about this one time, gave this illustration. Said, you know, if you go to McDonald's and you walk in and you want to place your order and you can find yourself frustrated and you go, you know what? I don't like what's on your menu. I want a Whopper. How far is that going to get you at McDonald's? Not very. No matter how much you rant, no matter how much you rave about your freedom and it's your choice and you can get what you want, there is no way for that person behind the counter to give you a Whopper at McDonald's. It just will never happen. And how similar is that to our lives? Sure, we have some level of control, but when the big things in life happen to us, we lose our job, the person we love gets diagnosed with cancer, or even maybe sometimes we're selected for a big promotion at work. We may have contributed to some factors, but at the end of the day, a lot happens to us and around us that we don't have a lot of say in. And if we have so little control, then what? How do we make sense of life? What is the point of this passage? What are we to do here? I think it comes down to just a few things we need to live into. And the first begins with this, knowing who is in control. Who is in control? That's the question. We've already seen in the words of Jesus, there was a time when he came and what he was doing and when his revealing should come about. In our last series, we looked at how God was in control over the Israelites as they were enslaved and how he led them through the Exodus. The question always comes down to, do we know who is in control and do we trust who is in control? Can we trust God with my life as I go through whatever I'm going through? I mean, look again at the last part of today's passage in Ecclesiastes. It says, what do workers gain from their toil? I've seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He's also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I love how the writer here, the teacher here, calls our lives a bit of a burden. You feel that sometimes? Oh, yeah. But can we sit in verse 11 for just a moment? Can we sit there just to read that? That first few words, He has made everything beautiful in its time. Now, don't make the mistake of saying, oh, well, that means everything happens for a reason. I don't believe that. I do believe that the passage's time tells us that sometimes things just happen. There's not a right time for everything, but we can trust the one who has control of time and the seasons, and trust that He can turn even the garbage, the brokenness, into something beautiful. He can make everything beautiful in its time. And that reminds us, if there's a season of weeping, there's also going to be a season of laughing. And the God who orders the seasons can make everything beautiful. He can take the ashes of our lives and make something beautiful, something gorgeous from it. We find that idea in Isaiah chapter 61. I love this passage because it's what Jesus quoted when He first began His ministry. Look at what it says. This is Isaiah 61. The Spirit of the sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim the freedom for the captives and release from darkness the prisoners. That's what Jesus quoted as He sat in the synagogue. It's a beautiful thing. But here's the rest of it. To proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of His splendor. We need those verses, don't we? We need to be reminded that as the seasons come and go, nothing lasts forever. This is a season. We will survive if we trust in the one who controls the seasons. Because seasons change. Seasons change. And knowing who is in control should give us a level of comfort to keep going even through the most difficult seasons. He is the Alpha and the Omega. He is the beginning and the end, the first and the last. And how much of our lives sometimes happens to us and we can't make sense of it. We don't understand it. Can we get through it if we can look to the one that can take our despair and give us a spirit of praise to comfort and guide us through whatever season we may be in? See, that's one of the things I think we have to understand is we don't have control, but we know the one who does. But that leads to a second point. Because we don't have control, what we do have control of is how are we going to respond in this season? We do get that level of control. We can't control what happens to us. We can control how we respond to it. As I was thinking about this week, I was thinking back 6 years ago. Anybody remember 6 years ago? It was almost this time, December of 2019, when we first heard about a little thing called coronavirus, COVID-19. Talk about a season none of us wanted or had any control over. Just think back for a moment. Do you remember the fear, the panic, all the things? I mean, it was a wild season, wasn't it? Aren't any of you looking forward when you have grandkids one day and you get old enough to tell them the story, I survived a global pandemic? I mean, we were there. We did that. We'll make t-shirts. Well, as I think about what happened then, and I don't wish that season on anyone, and I grieve over those we lost, and we lost people even here at Ashworth at that time. I still think back to that season and look at it as what an invitation that was there for us, a forced slowing down and stopping. To be honest, I kind of embraced it. I was able to keep working. My pace changed a little bit. I remember being here on this stage on Thursday nights and recording videos for 15 weeks and producing them on Friday mornings and throwing them up on the internet for Sundays. But I remember so many conversations during that season as well. So many people fighting and resisting, getting angry over one thing or another. And the battle cry became, let's just get back to the way things used to be. Yeah, we want to get back to freedom and speaking face to face. And I think Amy nearly shriveled up and died from a lack of hugs. But if we don't stop and ask, where is God in this season? What can I learn from this? What is God inviting me to? Could we not just say we might be wasting even a season of global pandemic? There's a lesson for us to learn, I think, in the seasons as we're going through them. The Apostle Paul, while sitting in jail, writes a letter, and he penned these words: I rejoiced greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I've learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. Remember, he's sitting in jail at this point. He's a prisoner. I've learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. He says, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. I love that he says, I've learned the secret. I wonder if we know that secret as we consider the season we're in. Have we learned the secret to be content, that we can do anything, all things, through the one who gives us strength? I know what happens when we try the opposite. The more we try to control, what happens? The more frustration we will experience. How are we embracing? How are we living in the season you might be in? Final thing I just want to talk about here is I think we have to learn to discern the seasons. I think we have to learn to discern. Not just so we can name it, but understanding we are in a season. Why is that important? Because it reminds us that God works in all seasons. We can meet God in all seasons, no matter where we may be. And not only that, our season is not the end of who we are. Our season is always a part of the bigger story that's being written and unfolded before us. And I think when we embrace this, it can help us stop fighting and find that contentment wherever we might be. Now, there are many ways to describe where you may find yourself now, many ways to describe the seasons we might experience. We can talk about weather, or climate, spring, summer, winter, autumn, all that fun stuff. You can talk about it in farming terms, planting and growing, pruning, harvesting and resting. Or even you can talk about it philosophically, orientation, disorientation, reorientation, whatever. Look at that. How would you define the season you're in? Where are you? As I wrap up, I do want to just kind of conclude with some of those questions that you saw earlier. But don't just think about them now. Think about them throughout the week. What season do you find yourself in now? What season do you find yourself in now? That's a tough question sometimes, because sometimes we don't even recognize the season until we're through it and on to the next one. Maybe more importantly, what are you learning about God in this season? God doesn't waste any season in our life. What is he revealing about himself to you with where you are? And maybe equally important is, what are you learning about yourself? Let's move on. We don't like that one. No. Are you learning that you're impatient? Are you learning that you have anger deep within? Are you learning that you have apathy in areas? What are you learning about yourself? Don't waste the season to learn about who you are. And maybe God is using the season just for that, to reveal some things. Not because he's a God that wants to smack you around because of it, but because he's a God that he says, I know this is hurting you. And we can use this season to bring these things to the top. And then God, like a skilled surgeon, will remove those things from our lives. And he'll say, now don't you feel better? Now can't you find healing and wholeness in your life? Are you stuck in a season? I think that's an important question. Is that because of you or because just it hasn't moved? I think sometimes we can stick ourselves in a season and we want to make sure we're not. Is God inviting you to a new season? That's a question. What transformation is happening in this season? Are you becoming more like Christ? Those are important things. And while we don't want to get unnecessarily stuck in a season, we shouldn't be locked down like we were in COVID-19. But maybe sometimes we need to stop fighting the season. Maybe the reason we're stuck is we're fighting. Maybe we need to see if we can find joy and peace and wholeness in the presence of God wherever we are. And if anyone can relate to the ups and downs of seasons, can I tell you that Jesus can? I mean, think about just the things that we know about his life. I love the images of him at the wedding at Cana where he performed his first miracle, because I see Jesus. We don't see this in the Bible, but I see Jesus dancing. Yeah. Because that's what you do at a wedding. Yes. Yes. Jesus is in the middle, and he's celebrating and rejoicing. But I also see Jesus in the wilderness, hungry. The tempter coming to him, tempting him. And I see the struggle and understand the challenge that might have been there for Jesus. I see a frustrated Jesus just kind of going, oh, these guys are never going to get it. How many times do I have to say the same thing? And I see a Jesus who's standing outside of Jerusalem, weeping because he loves them so dearly. You see, Jesus can understand the season that you're in better than probably we can, because he's been there through seasons of life and death and resurrection. He's been there. And maybe, just maybe, it's exactly in the season you are in. You are there because that's where Jesus wants to meet you. And can I just tell you this morning, whether you're on the pinnacle or in the pit, wherever you may be, I want you to hear Jesus say to you this morning, Jesus says, I see you. Jesus says, I hear you. And maybe more importantly, Jesus says, I am with you. Amen. Let's pray.